Okay, so today we will discuss about zero copy clone. Okay, this is very unique features in Snowflake, and what is this features does is what does mean by clone? Clone means creating another copy of existing object. Clone means creating another copy of existing object. So it is kind of a like backup related thing. Like if you want to create a backup from so creating clone means it's a kind of like it's a process of basically uh, it's the process of creating another copy of the existing object. Okay, so that is what we call as a clone. Let's say you have a table, exactly same table backup you want to create. So generally you can use these clone features and you can create the backup of the table. Not only table like database, schema, or any other objects like your stream, task, stage, so whatever. So you can basically create the clone copy of those objects as well. So we'll discuss. So first we need to understand what is the difference between the normal backup and clone backup. So that difference we need to find out. Let's say for an example, you have a table called policy. Now you want to create the backup of that policy table. So what you will do? You will write create table. Let's say policy underscore backup as select star from policy. This is what actually happens. Like whenever we create it, this is the existing process. Like let's say I want to create a backup table. Like I create like this way: create table name as select star from table name. So what does it mean? It means a new table called policy underscore backup will be created. A new table called policy underscore backup will be created, and that will be the basically the copy, or you can say this is the backup of the policy table. So new table with this name will be created, and that will be the backup of the policy table. Now by this process also you can create the backup of the table, database, schema. But the thing is that what is the difference? What is the main drawback if I create a backup of a table like this way? The main drawback is whenever we create the backup like this way, what happens? The data from the policy table will physically copy to the policy underscore backup table. Data here we will be having data copy, physical data copy. For an example, let's say this policy table stored the data here. That means the policy table reading the data from this location. Now what it will do, it will copy the data from this location to some other location, and that will be referred by the policy underscore backup table. So simple calculation, if the policy table is containing 1 million record, and let's say it is taking maybe 1 GB of storage, then similarly policy underscore backup table also will contain the same 1 million record, and it will also contain 1 GB of storage. Now see and understand carefully, whatever the policy table and the policy backup table containing the same record. Whatever record is there with the policy table, the same record is there with the policy underscore backup table also. Whatever 1 million record are there with the policy table, the same 1 million record is there with the policy underscore backup table also. But in your storage, you actually storing this same 1 million record into two different places. One location is being pointed by policy table, another location is being pointed by the policy underscore backup table. Why? Because whenever we create the table backup by this way, then let's say policy table stored the or reading the data files from this location. Now data will be copied from here to another location, and that location will be pointed by the policy underscore backup table. So simple calculation, policy table will be storing their data into separate locations. Similarly, policy underscore backup table also will store the data separate location, because here physical data copy happens. And because of this reason, one drawback is it is incurring additional cost. Why? Because whenever, though both the table is having the same data, both the table is containing same data, but still they are creating their own individual copy of data, and that's the reason they are actually occurring, they are actually consuming more storage. So you can see here, though both the table is having 1 million record only, but still they are actually occupying 1 GB plus 1 GB 2 GB storage to store same 1 million record. This is the main drawback in case of traditional backup. Here it is incurring additional cost. But if you go with the clone features, for an example, in case of clone, what we do, create table policy underscore backup clone policy. We run this execution. So it will be doing exactly same what it is doing, but here data will not copy from the policy table to policy underscore backup table. Here data will not copy from the policy table to policy underscore backup table. In this case, what will happen, instead of giving data or instead of copying data, policy table will share the policy table's metadata information with the policy underscore backup table. Now this metadata information will be containing all the micro-partition details which is referred by the policy table. So that means both the table will be referring to the same file system or same file location, and they will be reading the data from the same location. So in this case, 1 GB plus 1 GB, not 2 GB storage will be occupied. In this case, only 1 GB storage will be sufficient for the both of the table. Here, policy underscore backup table will not have any extra storage space occupied. Whatever the policy table is reading the data from the same location, the policy underscore backup table also will read the data. And also here, because we are not shifting, or we are not moving our data, we are not copying our data from one location to another location. Similar, that's the reason here resource utilization also will not be there. This type of cloning features will be basically functioning by the cloud layer itself, and that is the reason your resource consumption is also not there. So by using clone, if you create a backup of the table, that means if you are creating the data backup, or simple thing, if you are creating the clone of any object, basically no additional cost is incurred. No additional cost is incurred, and it will take less time also. Why? Because here we are copying entire data. Here we are not copying any data. We are just sharing our metadata. Metadata will have all the micro partitions details, and that will be shared with the policy underscore backup table. Okay. This is what we call zero copy clone. In case of zero copy clone, generally, what is the main advantage we are getting? We are creating the copy of the existing object without incurring any additional cost. You can see, creates the copy of existing database schema and non-temporary tables in the system. Why it is saying non-temporary table, I'll tell you later. Zero copy cloning feature provides a convenient way to quickly take a snapshot of the table, schema, or database. It is the way to take the initially. It is the process of taking quick snapshot of the table, schema, and database. Okay, creates the derived copy of that object which initially shares the underlying storage. So initially they shares the underlying storage. That's the reason no additional cost has been incurred. Useful for creating instant backup that do not incur any additional cost until changes are made to the cloned object. So until and unless you are making any changes to the cloned object, so basically no additional cost will be incurred. Okay, so what does it mean? It means, let's say after some time I inserted some data here in the policy underscore backup table. So that data, whatever data changes I made in the policy underscore backup table, so that changes will be only referred to the policy underscore backup table. Let's say I inserted 1 lakh record. So that record will be stored separately, and those micro partition will be only pointed by the policy underscore backup table, not with the policy table. Okay, so any additional changes if I make, so in those cases basically that particular micro partition will be only pointed by that particular table, not by other tables. So generally they are individual table, and basically these tables, whatever changes I make in the policy underscore backup table, that will not reflected in the policy table. So that you have to understand. Once the backup is created, they are individual table. So that's the reason if I make any additional changes here, so that will be stored in the separate micro partition, and that will be referred by the policy underscore backup table only. Now clone can be cloned with no limitations on the number of iterations of clones that can be created. So a clone copy again can be created a clone, then again can be created a clone. So there is no issue with the upper limit how many times you can create the clone. Detail operation on the clone table will not affect the original table. So as I told you, these are all individual table. So if I make any changes here or here, so that will not affect the other tables. So this is what the zero copy clone. Now, if you understand the properly, so if you see this picture, you will be able to see the table A is the source table, which I created a clone of the table B. So table B is the clone table. Now both the, because it is a zero copy clone features, so that's the reason data did not copy to the table B. What happened? Table A shares the metadata of the table A. Table A shares the metadata of table A to table B. Then both the table will be referring to the same metadata, and internally that metadata is referred to the same file system. So from there it is reading the data by the both the table. That is what it is happening here. Okay. So this is what the zero copy clone. Now let's see how basically this cloning features will be working, and we have a lot of other advantages as well that I will show you practically. So let's see. First, I'm going to create one database called zero copy DB. So you can see this is the database, and I'm going to create one schema called zero copy SC schema. And now what I'll do, I will provide the database and schema access. So let's say grant usage on database. Let's say I want to provide this database access to somebody else. Why I am providing this access to somebody else, that I will tell you, I will show you after some time. So as of now, let's say I am providing the database access, grant usage on database zero copy DB to role, let's say sysadmin. Okay, let's execute. I'm providing this privilege to sysadmin. Similarly, I will be providing the schema access also, grant usage on schema zero copy SC to sysadmin. Okay, I provided the database access, I provided the schema access to sysadmin. Why I provided, I'll tell you later. Now inside this database, inside this schema, I will be creating a all type of object. Okay, so remember, first I will take the database backup, then I will take the schema copy by using clone features, and then I will show you how to create the copy of the table also. So first, that's the reason, because I will be creating the clone copy of the database. Now that's the reason, before creation of the clone copy of the database, I will create all the objects inside the database. Okay, like your table, task, stream, like whatever objects we have learned till now, stage, pipe, all the objects we will be creating inside the database. Okay, so let's create. So first, what I'm doing, I'm creating three type of tables. One is, okay, let me select the virtual warehouse also here. So let me create three type of tables here. So let's say I'm creating temporary table, then I'm creating permanent table, then I'm creating transient table, and along with that I'm inserting couple of records also into each of the tables. So let's insert. Okay, I inserted. Now I will be providing this table access also to the sysadmin. To provide the table access, what I do, I will write here grant select on table name to role sysadmin. Okay, so why I am providing that I will tell later, but as of now I provided the database access, I provided the schema access, as well as I provided the this table access as well. Okay, fine. So that's fine. Okay, now I provided. Now let's say what I'm doing, I'm creating the file format. So let's create the file format. These are all database objects, right? So all the database objects we are creating. So I created the file format. Okay, now after that, what I'm doing, I'm creating the stage object. So before creation of the stage, I will see what is the, okay, let me, because I need to check what connection has been established. So we will not establish the connection. So let's say copy, and so let's create the stage. And once the stage is created, now I will be providing the stage access also to the sysadmin. Let's say I'm writing grant usage on stage. Okay, then stage name to sysadmin. Okay, I'm providing this stage access also to the sysadmin. Done. Now, these are all the objects that I'm creating inside the database. That doesn't mean I cannot create the separate copy of this object. I can do that. How I can do that? For an example, let's say if I create, uh, let's say if I want to create the separate copy of the stage object, like what I want to show is basically I want to create all the object inside the database, and then as a whole I want to create the clone copy of the database. So that we will see that I can do. But individual level cloning also possible. Let's say I want to create another same copy of this stage. So that also I can do. So how I will do, like I can create stage, let's say stage 1. Okay, then clone, you have to give the basically the main stage name, and execute. So you can see the stage got created. Now if you write here show stages, you will see here two stages there. One is this one is this one. Okay, two stages is there. One is this one is this one. So that means you can see this is the this was the main stage, but this was the new stage, and you can see exactly same. Everything will be copied. Everything is copied. You can see. Okay, so basically exact copy of the another stage will be created. This is the way, basically individual level also you can create the cloning. Okay. If you go to the sysadmin, now you can see database privilege received, schema privilege received, table we have this employee table. This is the privilege we provided, stage privilege we provided. Now you can see there is there. So anyways, so these are all the privilege we provided. So that's the reason these privileges has been showing over there. This object is showing with the sysadmin. So I created the stage, I created the file format, I created the table. So these are all the things I created. Now I will be creating the pipe object. For an example, let's say I'm creating one pipe object. Let me create the pipe. So you created the pipe. Okay. Now similarly, if you see the show pipes, you can see this is the pipe object I created. Okay. Now let's say I'm creating one stream object. So that is also database object. I'm creating one stream object here. Creator replace stream, stream name on table employees. So I'm creating the stream, and also I'm updating some value of the employee table. Let's say update employees set employee ID is equal to this. So I'm just updating the employee tables value so that the stream can have some data. I just wanted to see the stream can have some data. Okay, so that's the reason I updated the base table also. Now these are all the already we have seen these features, so I'm not explaining the what is stream and all because we already have covered this thing in our classes. Now let's say I'm creating one task. So that task also, let's say I'm creating one task. Let's create the task here. Okay, so let's create the task. Now if you want to create the individual level cloning, that also possible. Like if you want to create another task with the this task, you can create task, let's say T1 clone emp underscore task. You can see this task has been created. Okay. So new task, if you want to see the show task here, now you can see that both the task is available. Okay. Now let's say I want to create a sequence. So a sequence is nothing but just it's an object which will be basically creating a unique number for each row. It will start with 1, it will increment with 1. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, like how the sequence is working in the other database, the same way. So basically all the objects we created here. Now if you want to check, you can refresh here. So, and if you see, you can see here stage table. Okay, you can see table, stage, file format, sequence, pipe, stream, task, each and everything we created inside the database, inside this schema. Okay, we created each and every object. In the table we have total 3 type of tables. In stage we have total 2 stage. In file format we have 1 file format. In the sequence we have 1 sequence. In the pipe we have 1 pipe. Then in the stream we have 2 we have 1 stream, probably, yes, 1 stream. In the task, we have 2 tasks. You can see all the objects we created inside the database, inside the schema. Okay. Now I told you how to create the individual level cloning also. Okay. These are all the objects cloning is possible. You can see database, schema, table, stream, and stage, file format, sequence, task. These objects cloning is possible for this object cloning is possible. Now I have shown you how to create the clone. They simply you have to write create task name, clone task name, create stage name, clone stage name, create stream name, clone stream name. Like that you can execute. Okay. So basically this is the way generally the cloning is created. So individual level cloning also you can create. And now whenever I will be creating the database cloning, let's say I have this entire database where we have all the objects available. Now, as a whole, I will be creating the clone copy of this database. How? So we take the database backup. Now, from now onwards, we will not take the database backup. In Snowflake, we will always create the clone. So create or replace database name, clone 0 copy db. What does it mean? It means a new copy of the cloned a new copy of the database will be created, and the name of the new database is cloned 0 copy db. Name of the new database is cloned 0 copy db. This one is the new database which will be created, which is exactly copy of this database. Okay, so let's create this database. Now whenever I am creating this database, let's see what happens here. Now the database cloning got created. You can see this is the features got executed. Okay, database cloning has been executed. To go to the query profile, you can see the database got created. Newly database gets created and nothing else here. Okay, so let's go to SQL. Now, if you go here and if you execute the refresh, you can see this is the new database got created. Now, if you open the new database, all the three schema is there, because here also total three schema was there. Then all the three schema has been created in the new database also. And along with that, if you go to the 0 copy SC schema, here all the objects has been created, like table, stage, file format, sequence, pipe, stream, task. All the objects has been created. But if you see the like this way, let's say if I open the table, now you can see here temporary table is not there. That is the reason it is said non-temporary table will be cloned. Why it is said? So you will be able to understand now. Now you can see that employees table is there, employees transient table is there, but not the temporary table. Remember one thing: whenever we are creating the backup of the database, or we are creating the backup of the schema, if that existing database or the existing schema is having any temporary table available, then that temporary table will not be cloned with the database or with the schema. Individual level, if you create the cloning of a table, then temporary table will be cloned. That is not any issue. But if you are creating the clone copy of a database or of a schema, then the basically then the temporary table will not be cloned. Temporary table will not be there in the new database. Now I will show you one thing. Let's say I'm going here in the database level. So let's say in the database level, you have, this is the database which was the main source, that main database, and now this is the database which you created, which is the clone copy of this database. If you click on this database, you can see we have provided the usage privilege to the sysadmin on this database, right? That's the reason I provided the grant usage on database name to sysadmin. I executed that statement, and this privilege I provided to the existing database. Now, if you go to the new database, you can see that privilege is not carry forwarded. Okay, that privilege is not carry forwarded. You can see here. You will not be able to see that that privilege has been carried forward. You will not be able to see that. Okay, but so whenever you created, so here what you did, you actually created the clone copy of the database. That's the reason you are not able to see that privilege has been carried forwarded. But inside the database, whatever other objects are there, those privilege has been carried forwarded. For an example, let's say if you see the schema also I provided the sysadmin privilege. Now if you see here, that privilege has been carried forwarded. If you go to the table level, then table privilege I provided, that privilege you can see it has been carried forwarded. If you see the stage privilege, is carry forwarded. You can see carry forward. So whenever we create the clone of database, then database level privilege will not be carry forward, but remaining under the database, whatever other objects will be there, like schema, table, stage, view, all objects will be carry forwarded. Okay, so that you have to understand. Similarly, whenever I will create the schema level cloning, then same schema level privileges will not be carry forwarded, but remaining under the schema, whatever privileges will be there, those will be carried forwarded. For an example, let's say if I go here in the SQL, you can see now I will be creating the schema cloning. Okay, so let me go to the let's say if I change my database to zero copy db and public not zero st schema, and what I will do now, I will be creating the schema of schema cloning. So here right now 3 schema is there. I'm gonna create one more schema. So create schema name, clone zero copy sc. So this zero copy sc is another clone copy I'm gonna create. So that is called as a cloned schema. So now here we are creating the cloning of the schema level. So let's create. Now what will happen? You can see that clone schema got created. Now inside the clone schema also all the objects will be there. Instead, but remember one thing, that a temporary table will not be cloned. So that is, as I told you, here temporary table is not there. Apart from that, remaining all the objects are there, but only temporary tables will not be there. Okay. So that is here also same thing. If you come here and refresh, now you can see in the zero copy DB, in the zero copy DB, we have now total 4 schema. Now this schema got created based on this schema. So that means this is the clone schema of clone copy of this schema. Now, if I see this schema, you have the sysadmin privilege on it. If you go to the clone schema, that privilege is not there. Okay. But inside that schema, if you check the table, that privilege is there. If you see, that privileges is there. So that you have to remember. So same level privileges does not copy, but the child level privileges will be copied always. Okay. Now what I will do, I will go and I will create the basically table level cloning. So to create the table level cloning, I am creating one new schema called test table sc. And inside that schema, what I will do, I will create all 3 type of table. So first I will create the temporary table, then I will create the permanent table, then I will create the transient table, and after that I will be inserting couple of values into each of the tables. Okay, so now you can see all the values will be inserted into the tables. So inserted. Now let me so here total 5 schema will be there. Another one is testable sc, and in that testable sc schema I created all 3 type of tables. In the testable sc schema I created all 3 type of tables. Okay, now all 3 type of tables, you can see employee, employees underscore temp, employees underscore transient. So now table level cloning we will be doing. Okay, remember one thing, whenever we are doing the table level cloning, so basically this is very important to understand why we do this thing. So for an example, one case can be like you want to create the another copy of the existing table. So in that is the reason you are creating the cloning. So for an example, let's say you have a permanent table, you have a transient table, you have a temporary table. Now permanent table is getting cloned to a permanent table, temporary table is getting cloned to a temporary table, transient table is getting cloned to a transient table. This is very common features. Okay, so and it is always possible. For an example, what I want to say is, let's say create table employees underscore clone, let's say. Okay, and create table employees underscore clone. Now clone employees. What does it mean? It means this is the permanent table. Permanent table is getting cloned to a permanent table, because this table also a permanent table. I did not mention any keyword here, means this table is also a permanent table. That what does it mean? It means employee table is getting cloned to a employees underscore clone. That means a new clone table I am creating on from the employee table, and both the tables are permanent table, because this table is also a permanent table. So whenever this table is getting cloned to a table, that is also a permanent table. So that is the reason both tables are permanent table, and that's the reason this is what we call permanent table is getting cloned to a permanent table. Or simply we can say like this way, P2P, or I can P2P means permanent table getting cloned to a permanent table. Okay, permanent table getting cloned to a permanent table, like that. Similar way, a temporary table can be cloned to a temporary table. Let's say employees underscore temp. This is the temporary table, and I will be writing here temp1 for an example, and here I will mention temporary. What does it mean? It means temporary. What does it mean? It means that this is the temporary table which is getting cloned to a temporary table. Means this table is also a temporary table. Okay, and similarly I can do with the transient also. So this one is the transient. I will write here tr1, and this will be a transient. Okay, fine. So permanent table is getting cloned to a permanent table. Temporary table is getting cloned to a temporary table. Now transient table is also getting cloned to a transient table. So by this way, what you can do, you can execute. Like let's say I'm creating the three tables, like three clones. Now let's execute. So whenever I will execute all the three, okay, what it is saying, object. Okay, so let me select the proper data schema, and this is basically your same type to same type cloning. Okay, so now you created the cloning of this table, three tables, that's fine. Okay, now let's say what I will do, I will as I know, there are three type of tables are there, right? One is permanent, one is transient, and one is temporary. Now, for an example, let's say by mistake, what you did, I will show you. By mistake, you created the permanent table. Okay, because permanent table is the secure table, as well as permanent table is the costly table also. Like permanent table charge you more storage rather than the transient and temporary, because permanent table is having the fail-safe period implemented. Permanent table is having the basically that thing, like more time travel periods implemented, and that is the reason permanent table cost you more. And because it is costing you more, so that means it is a costly table, like it is always increase the project cost. Now let's say by mistake you created the permanent table, actually you wanted to create a transient table or temporary, maybe transient table, but you by mistake created a permanent table. Now what you will do? So in those cases, what we do, we create the new copy of the table, but that copy will be a transient. That means I will not say transfer, because let's say you created a permanent table called employees, Now I don't want to continue with the type permanent. So what I can do, I can clone the permanent table to a transient table. So that thing I can do. After that, I can drop the permanent table. So my transient table will be available here in this schema in this database. And going forward, we will be using transient table instead of using the permanent table. Okay. So what I can do here, I can write like this way. Let's say create transient table. So create transient table, table name, cloned employees. Employees is the permanent table, which is getting cloned to a transient table. So permanent table is getting cloned to a transient table. Now another thing possible that I created a permanent table that I want to clone with the temporary table. So permanent table will be cloned to a temporary table. Okay, so let's try that one. Let me copy this entire thing again. This is the permanent table will be cloned to a temporary table. You can see. Okay. So permanent table is getting cloned to transient table. This is the example. Permanent table is getting cloned to a temporary table. This is the example. Now transient table can be cloned to a temporary table. So that I will write here. So let's execute. So this is the transient table which will be cloned to a temporary table. So I will write here temporary. Now let's try one by one. So execute. You can see this is created. Now I am executing this one. You can see this is also created. Now if I try this one, you can see this is also created. So if you refresh here the table, now all the tables has been created here. You can see. Employee tables, employee cone, employee TMP, employee TMP1, all the tables are there. Okay. But they did not include any additional cost. That is the main advantage. This table, this table, this table, these three tables, they are not include any additional cost. Even you are creating the table, and because you created the table, that means the data is there in this table. If you see here, you can see here also, you can be able to see the 5 records are there. You can see here also 2 records are there. So that means this table also having record. But the most interesting thing is your virtual warehouses is in suspended mode. That means you are creating the backup table but not using any virtual warehouses. Why? Because data copy is not happening here. But at the same time, if you create a backup table, it will be using this virtual warehouse. Okay. So anyway, so permanent to transient, permanent to temporary, transient to temporary, all done. So that means from up to down, everything is possible. Up to down means permanent to transient, permanent to temporary, transient to temporary, done. Now I will go down to up, like temporary to transient, temporary to permanent, transient to permanent. Okay, so let's do that. So first I will copy this one. So temporary table will be basically moved to a transient one. So let's do that. This is the temporary table which is being cloned to a transient one. Temporary table is being cloned to a transient one. Similarly, temporary table will be cloned to a permanent one. So that is also we will try. Temporary table is getting cloned to permanent one. Let's say here I am writing P1. Okay. So temporary table is getting cloned to permanent one. Now transient table also will try to clone to a permanent one. So let's copy this statement and write here. Now here I will delete this one. So this will be the permanent table. And this is, so first I will try this one, which is temporary table is getting cloned to transient one. So let's say by default, by mistake, you created one temporary table, but you don't want to continue with the temporary table. You want to hold this data for the longer time. So temporary table is session based table. That's the reason you just created a new copy, clone copy, which is the transient table. Now the transient table is the long time available. It is not auto drop. So your data will be persistent in your database. Okay, so that's the reason this situation creates. So temporary table gets cloned to transient. Now temporary table will be cloned to permanent. So if I try to do that, it will fail. Why? Because temporary table cannot be cloned to a permanent table. If you by mistake, if you have created a temporary table and but you don't want to lose those data, you want to store those data for the longer time, you cannot create the permanent table based on a temporary table. You can create the transient table. That example already we have seen. This is the example. Temporary table can be cloned to a transient one, but temporary table can't be cloned to a permanent one. Similarly, transient table also can't be cloned to a permanent one. If you try to create the transient table cloned to a permanent table, that is also not possible. Transient object cannot be cloned to a permanent object, and that is not only for the table level. In case of database and schema also, this is real fact. Temporary object cannot be cloned to permanent. Similarly, transient object also cannot be cloned to permanent. These two things you have to remember. Okay. If you have the temporary table, you want to hold that data for the longer time, you can create a transient table on top of temporary. That's fine. But the temporary table directly cloned to a permanent table, this is not possible. Similarly, if you have a transient table and you want to clone that table to a permanent, that is also not possible. So transient table also can't be cloned to a permanent table. Okay. So these are all the things you have to remember. Apart from that, all the other conversions are possible. Okay. Now let's say, how will you understand that which table is actually what I can say, which table is actually the main table and which table is actually the clone table? To understand this thing, let's say let's say I created this I created this employees underscore clone table, which is the clone copy of employees table. So that means employees table is the main table and employees underscore clone table is the clone table, right? So what I can do, I have a view called table storage metrics. Okay. I have a view called table storage metrics, and in that table storage metrics, basically, I will be having all the details about the table, and this table storage metrics available in the information schema of every database. Okay. This is a view where I pass the table name of the employees. Employees table is the main table, and table catalog is nothing but the database name. This is the zero copy DB database, and table schema is test table ST schema. This is the test table ST schema. And let's create this. Let's see the data from here. Let me execute. Okay, 1 second. Let me execute this one. So you can see. 1 second. We will see the today's date. So this is the today's date, 5/3/2024, and today's date we created one employees table, and that table is basically the main table. And you can see this table's ID and clone group ID is exactly same, 22539. This is the ID and clone group ID is exactly same. ID and clone group ID, if the ID and clone group ID is same, then you have to understand that this table is the main table. It is not a clone table. Okay, this is not a clone table. If the any table's ID and clone group ID is same, you have to understand that table is not a clone table. That is the main table. Now, if you check with the employees underscore clone table, which is itself a clone table. Now, if you see that table, now you can see their ID and clone group ID is different. ID and clone group ID is different. Whenever ID and clone group ID is different, you have to understand this is a clone copy, clone table. Okay, and clone group ID will be exactly same of its source table's ID. Now you can see in this table, if you check, your ID is 22539. If you check this table, its clone group ID is 22539. So by using these features, you will be able to understand that this table is the clone copy of employee. Okay. This is how your zero copy clone features works. Clear? Any doubt, any question here? All good? Okay. So that's all for today's session. We'll join again tomorrow and we'll continue. Thank you, guys.
The meeting has ended. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.